Okay, so well, Joey, thank you very much for accepting this interview. Oh, you just met my dog, Indiana. I'm very happy to have you here because actually you are like changing the game of sustainable fashion and ethical fashion. Well, you will explain. So first of all, can you just introduce yourself briefly?
Okay, so yeah, I'm Joey Pringle, the founder of Veshin Factory. We are an OEM manufacturer located in Guangzhou, China, and we specialize in producing luxury vegan leather handbags and accessories. So we produce for brands across the globe. We're not a brand ourselves. We just make for like-minded brands that share our same culture and values.
Well, actually, what I find very impressive is that you make ethical and sustainable fashion made in China, and usually we have like this image of made in China is not good for the humans, is not good for the environment, even for the animals, because we think that Chinese might eat like some weird animals and like this. So I think like this is really a game changer.
Yeah, it's the media. The media gives China a bad name, but it's not as bad as it sounds like that. It's just about what you read in the media. When you go to China, you'll quickly realize it's not the case.
And so just about you, about your background, before founding Veshin, you were working in the fashion industry, you were working in China. Like how did you come to founding Veshin?
So yeah, I'm an accessories designer. I was living in Canada for the last 8 years. Originally, I'm from the UK, but I've worked in Melbourne as a designer, and then later I was in Canada. And my last job in Canada was responsible for overseeing the entire accessories collection from a design, development, sourcing perspective. And with my job, I was responsible to go into Vietnam and to China to see our factories, making sure that they were following our rules on sustainability and social compliance. And I met with one really impressive factory in Guangzhou who shared very similar values to me, and he explained that he wanted to convert his current leather goods factory into a more sustainably focused factory. And I love what he stood for, and he showed great initiative with changing his values and changing his business. And we decided to join forces and start Veshin together.
Yeah, so he was actually aware that leather is very bad for the environment and also for the humans, because, well, as we said just before, I am preparing this article about, well, talking among other subjects about leather, and actually it has like this very natural image, but actually it's not, because it needs a lot of chemicals, it needs a lot of, well, transformation to have leather, and even when it's tanned with like vegetable tanned leather, still it needs to raise cattle, so you need to give them food and water and like this, so it's not sustainable at all. So I think it's a great thing that well, even these people and even some factories in China are already aware that this is not the good way to go. Like producing
I mean, they're both converted Buddhists, so the main reason was the treatment of animals. It's very hard for them to have a business working with leather when they practice Buddhism. It just doesn't make sense. So they wanted to change quickly. They've owned a factory for over 10 years and they've become Buddhists in the last 3 years, followed the Buddhist principles. So it takes time to change. They can't change overnight. So now I'm here and I'm a co-owner. We're going to try and create this new model, which is Veshin, over the next couple of years, and transition all of our current leather goods business, hopefully, into Veshin, and then take on any new vegan brands and specialize in producing luxury vegan goods.
Well, that's great. Well, actually, for my next question, I will begin with a quote from Jane Goodall. She says, "All the time we are hearing this phrase, think globally, act locally. But that's completely the wrong way around, because if we think globally, there is so much wrong on our planet today, environmentally and socially. If we start thinking globally, we feel filled with despair, we feel helpless, because of course, what can I do about it? However, if we twist it around and we think locally, we realize there is something we can do about it locally. Together, well, we get together with other like-minded people, we take action, we feel and see and know that we are making a difference. And so suddenly we're filled with hope. Together we can make a difference. So my question about this would be, because, well, of course, I totally agree with what Jane Goodall says about this. And, well, if we actually make this phrase the other way around, it would be think locally, act globally. So do you think that you are doing this with Veshin, and what does it mean to you to act globally with sustainability?
So yeah, with Veshin, we obviously I'm going right into the raw source, which is China. So that's our starting point. So first things first, we want to empower locally within Guangzhou that with a factory model can be built off certain values, and then hopefully from building such a business in our local environment, that will spread waves of energy, hopefully into a global aspect. Our business is a global business because we deal with customers all over the world. So obviously it starts with us locally solving a solution and then basically radiating that energy and positivity out into the industry. From a personal standpoint, for sure, there's a quote that says, big change starts small. So it is an overwhelming thing thinking about becoming carbon neutral or being 100% sustainable, and honestly it's near impossible. These words are quickly becoming buzzwords, being like, I'm sustainable, I'm vegan, I'm carbon neutral. Like, it's near impossible to be excel and excellence in all those things. So all you can do is make the smallest little changes possible and be as progressive as possible. And that starts with small changes. And that's shopping locally, the way you eat locally, these types of things. And then by doing that, you're encouraging people around you in your local environment to start following those similar patterns. And then naturally from there, you will just radiate again that energy, and it will start to shift to the next town and the next city and the next country. And then, yeah, so I mean, it all starts with big changes starting small. And for me, I'm a pretty spiritual person now, and everything comes down to meditation, which raises consciousness within the individual. And for us to be able to get to that huge global change, we need to be able to raise consciousness. And that starts with the individual. And again, that starts in your local environment, and it starts within yourself. So the minute you find that inner peace within yourself, you'll start making changes within yourself, to the person next to you, to the people that you see on the streets. It will naturally become more positive. And again, you're just radiating that positive energy, and it all starts with the core. And then eventually, if we can continue on that wavelength and share that love and consciousness, these global changes will happen.
Yeah, well, actually, that's also why I was so happy to have you here in an interview today, because we are not making the same thing, but we share, like, I think totally the same vision of things. Because I think, like, those small steps you are talking about are so important. And also just being an example, even if you're not perfect, just be the example that people can just relate to. And I mean, it's even more powerful if you're not perfect, because nobody's perfect. And if you show yourself as perfect, people will think that they cannot reach this level.
Yeah,
if you show that you have, like, just flows, they can relate, and they can just think, okay, so I can do this as well.
And that's where greenwashing comes into place, where people are manipulative with the way they market their product, because they're living in fear, because they're scared about being torn down for not doing something correctly. It's okay not to do everything correctly. Or what is not okay is when you do know how to do something correctly, to ignore to do it. So do I know all the answers to sustainability right now and being carbon neutral? No, I don't. But I'm quickly learning, and I'm striving to be the most progressive as I can. And the minute I do learn something, that's when you're at that higher state of consciousness, you'll be able to implement that into your business or into your values, into your day-to-day, because you've learned and understood what it needs to make that change. And again, you just got to take it day by day, hour by hour, minute by minute. And then eventually, living and breathing those changes, you'll start seeing it on a bigger picture, week by week, month by month, year by year, and it will just naturally unfold. So all you can do is just be the most progressive as possible and not live in fear of not doing it correctly.
Yeah, anyway, I think that, well, as you talked about carbon neutral, I think like as far as you are human, it's not possible to be carbon neutral, except maybe if you are living like in a remote place and just living on what you grow and like this. But well, I think that right now it's very good to do this, and for people who are living like this, it's wonderful. But I think we also need people who show the path, and that, well, even if they're not carbon neutral or perfect or like this, people who show that you can do things differently. And I feel like as businesses, we have a great responsibility about this, to show that you can consume differently, that you can have a good way of living, but not destroying the planet, not destroying the animals, not destroying the humans. So I think like, well, that's why I put myself into business in the first place. I mean, my goal is not just to make shoes, is to change the world, I hope. And so this goes like by step, but still I think like we have a great responsibility about this vision we give to the people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, all we can do is raise positivity and just empower people. I used to be an activist. Activism isn't the route to success. Activism causes divides, it causes stress and tension and negativity. All we have to do is just live in a positive state and empower, and just understand that it takes time. And I always go back to the famous quote, Rome wasn't built in a day. It takes time, but as long as you're on the path to caring and trying, it will happen.
Well, my next question is that, well, mostly talking about sustainability today, it only refers to the planet or eventually to the climate. But in my view, this is narrow-minded. So, well, I think I will share my point of view during our talk. But first, I would like to ask you how you feel about sustainability addressing only the topic of the planet or only the topic of the climate, and what do you consider important in sustainability? Sorry, there is a dog.
Not the dog. Yeah, I mean, ultimately, sustainability's goal is holistically looking at the planet, right? So I guess what's happened right now is that we've lost the messages below that. Holistically, that is the main goal, is to create a more sustainable Earth. But yeah, there's so many little branches that fall from underneath that are so important to sustainability that we're losing. And again, it's basically what we talked about before, like you changes start small. You're on the path to that ultimate goal, which is sustaining planet Earth. But there's so many aspects of sustainability underneath that need to be seriously looked into. I mean, it just, again, it all falls into being conscious and living in that state and basically having that balance. The minute you're out of balance somewhere, that's just an unsustainable practice, and it's just about finding that balance within your lives. So yeah, I mean, the ultimate goal is the planet, so I do agree with that, but there is loads of little parts underneath that we're missing, stepping stones to getting to that goal, and that's what's not happening right now. We're not taking the correct stepping stones, and we're getting overwhelmed by the grander message, and it's impossible to tackle the big message from an individual standpoint overnight. We need to do those little steps, and then eventually we'll be able to get to that grand. Naturally, we'll just organically get to that holistic message of the planet, and yeah, it will just naturally fall into place, provided we take those stepping stones right now.
Well, actually, I don't know how you feel about it, but I feel like talking only about the planet, it leaves like the human part and the animal part aside. Like many people, I think, when they say they are they have a sensibility about the environment, they talk only about the planet, but like as if the planet itself was alive. But actually, the planet is not it's just a planet. And even if we disappeared, the planet can go on like just like this. So I think it's important not to forget like the human part and the animal part, because actually that's why this planet is worth living in, and that's why this planet is worth fighting for, because it's the only planet where we have this biodiversity and where we have like the chance to have all of this. So I think it's very important not to forget that all things are linked. That I think like meditation can help to realize this, that we are all linked, and that if we make animals suffer, we make the planet suffer, and we make humans suffer as well, because like humans work in animal exploitation, they have very bad working conditions. It's it's terrible actually. So yeah, I think that we should really remember that everything is a whole and everything is linked, and that you cannot be bad, let's say, with one of the aspects and be absolutely perfect and good with another one.
No, exactly. I mean, ultimately, everything is the same stuff. Like, if you want to look at it from a grand perspective, that tree behind you is built up of the same atoms and molecules as we are. We're all built with the same energy of the universe. We had this thing about dividing things on planet Earth with animals and humans and race and color and nationalities, but ultimately it's all the same thing. So when you care about the environment, you're basically caring about energy and matter, and it all just comes into the unified field of just energy and consciousness. So it's all linked. It's all the same thing. So it's just about, yeah, everything's the same.
I will get to this point because you are talking about nationalities and like this. And so my next question is that usually the local argument is used by brands to advertise about their sustainability.
Yeah.
Should it be justified or not? Because sometimes even if it's locally made, it's not better than something else. Like for example, for the things that are made in France, to have the label made in France, it only requires that some steps are made in France, but you don't have to make the whole process in France. And so do you feel that this argument is overrated, like the locally made argument? And would you say that there is some local washing, just like we see greenwashing?
Oh, I mean, 100%. I might piss some people off with this answer, but this is how I see it. But I'm not patriotic at all. I've lived on 3 continents, soon to be 4. I am British, but am I a patriotic British guy? Not at all. The whole made locally is very biased towards your own country, and I see the world holistically as one planet. And if it's made in China or made in France, it's made on planet Earth. It's the same thing. I understand supporting local business, so that's fine, supporting local business, but we're losing that local business message, and it's becoming this thing of like prejudice and discriminating against other countries. And the reason why there's so much more emphasis on made locally and made in your own country is because there's a lack of transparency in the industry where things are getting made. People don't like things getting made in China because they've heard such a bad stigma that's associated with China. That's not the case. Once you get radical transparency on a product, it's fine to get made in China. It's fine to get something made in a different country, providing you know exactly what's gone into it. So the reason why there's so much emphasis now on getting things made locally is because there's an aspect of just giving up on other countries because we're not getting that level of transparency. And with Veshin, what I'm trying to do is celebrate the fact that getting something made in China is a pretty amazing thing. There's amazing people there. There's a lot of love in that country, and they deserve the right to have things made there still. For sure, there's a lot of bad things happening in China, but that shouldn't take away from the fact that there's a lot of positivity happening. And then also now we're seeing a lot of brands being very sneaky with getting things made locally, because I've experienced it, and I'm not being rude to France in particular, but I'm talking to a few French companies this year who said to me they can get stuff made with me at Veshin, and we will ship them the goods, and then they will finish it in France, so they can say made in France.
Yeah, you have the stamp made in France, so you can sell it like at a higher price and like this. Yeah, so that's not like very transparent.
That's horrendous behavior. One, you're deceiving the supply chain, and you're not celebrating the people that have worked hard on that product within China, and you're not being proud about something getting made in China. And two, you're deceiving your own nation. Like, people want to buy made in France because they like the idea of supporting their local country. That's fine, but you're lying to your own people by doing that. And I've also heard many stories of products made in Romania and Albania, and then they come to France or Italy, and then they said made in Italy, made in France. Like, it was very new to me learning these things, but because I was always a believer, when it's made in France and made in Italy, it's literally made in Italy, made in France. That is just horrendous behavior, because it's not fair to Romania or Albania that their people aren't celebrated for making that product. And so we are really losing the local message. It is a good message to have. The principle of it at the beginning makes sense from a carbon perspective. To have things made locally is good for your emissions, and it's good for your local environment and your local economy. But in recent times, it has become this equivalent of greenwashing, with basically trying to make money out of saying something's made locally where it's not. So moving forward, the key to answering this is radical transparency. Once a company has radical transparency on made in China, then they can not live in fear, and they can get it made in China. If they don't want to get it made in China and they're adamant on getting it made in France, that's fine. But there's no point not exploring the options, providing you have transparency. And I'm pretty confident once the world becomes a more transparent place, we will start working with other nations and building better relationships and not having these stigmas in place. And right now, it's just, again, there's so much fear on the planet, and we need to reduce that fear and celebrate love and celebrate transparency. And then from those things, we'll start seeing healthier businesses and people, and the consumer will be more conscious making the decision about if they want it made in China or made in France.
Yeah, well, thank you. I think there are a lot of interesting points in your answer. Well, actually, that's true that people, when they buy like locally made, like made in France, I think like in their mind, it's obviously the whole product that is made in France. And yeah, so that's kind of cheating on the consumer to have some things that are not entirely made in France. And also, I totally agree with your point of view that I think like this local argument being raised a lot by fear, actually, because I think that we fear for our planet right now with the COVID, we fear for ourselves even. So I think we are like a little bit shutting down. And actually, well, I think the good way to do things is to open, like, well, obviously, as you said, locally made is good. It's not better. Made in China is not better than a good thing made in France or made in England or whatever. But I think that, well, yeah, we should really like open our hearts and open our views that we are on the same boat, actually. So I think that's
exactly.
That's the main thing.
And the consumer will dictate everything, and we are starting to see a shift in transparency and pushing to make sure businesses are being run correctly, and the consumer will decide if they're happy or not. And I'm pretty confident once these brands start promoting where they're getting their things made and things getting made ethically, and there's way more video content of what's happening in these factories, and the certifications are in place, the consumer will just be happy. Right now, the consumer lives in fear. So what they do is say, oh, I want to get made locally because I trust locally. Locally is no different to like something made in China or Bangladesh. Like in Great Britain, the factory culture we have here is pretty toxic in the fashion industry, there's a lot of bad factories that are operating just as poorly as a Chinese, Indian, Bangladesh factory, and that's on our home soil. And that's happening in France as well, with not being transparent or where it's getting made. So again, the consumer just needs to push. If it's made locally, ask the same questions. Don't just say, oh, it's made in France, I'm not going to ask any more questions. They need to be asking the same questions. Is it made in France? If it's made in Albania or Romania, push the brand to get that information.
Yeah, that's what you said just before, that, well, people don't want to buy made in China because there are a lot of bad things happening there, but actually there are a lot of bad things happening everywhere. So I think, yeah, it's not like buying from your own or local place is not a guarantee that you will have something with no bad things in it, actually.
Like, I mean, with China, it's like America. It's like no one in our society, in the sustainable world, is a Donald Trump fan. You know what I mean? No one sees eye to eye with him, but he was the president of America. And if we judged America based on Donald Trump and we didn't fly to America or get things made in America, that is just discriminating against that entire country, because that entire country, regardless of Donald Trump, has a lot of positives, has a lot of love. There's a lot of incredible people in there with incredible values. And you can't just discriminate against the entire country because of Donald Trump. And that's exactly what's happening in China. Everyone's discriminating against China because of what they've seen in the media. Based that on the same as Donald Trump, that means you're not going to work in America or go to America. It's the same in China. The difference between China and America is because one's a Western country, one's not a Western country. So it's harder to kind of get that transparency. But yeah, it's just about making your own decisions and just being realistic, really.
And well, actually, something I forgot mentioning until now in this interview is that also a lot of well, many times it's about the transportation, that people think that locally made is better. But well, actually, when we read the studies, we realize that transportation of the final product doesn't count. Well, it has a very little impact on the total environmental cost of a product, and what counts the most is the production, actually. So the raw material, the transformation, well, all the steps in the factory and like this. This is like more than 90% of the ecological cost of a product. So well, actually, like the argument of locally made because it would be better for the planet, I think it's overrated. Of course, like transportation has a cost in the end, but it's not like the main point of being sustainable, actually.
Yeah, I mean, if it's locally made of local materials, that's going to be the solution, but it's not. And for example, with me, we make a lot of products using deserto cactus leather, and you're still sending that material from Mexico to France. It's still the same supply chain. For sure, at the end, there's going to be longer shipping from China to France. So it will come out probably better getting it made in France. But there's so many aspects that go into the entire equation. And again, it's just about living in that state of consciousness. And if it makes sense to get something made in Europe, it makes sense to get something made in Europe. The dog's jumping.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's all a catch-22, and you just got to make the best decisions possible that work for you, and not kill yourself over it.
And well, my final question is about well, for the consumer, how can they make sure that something they buy made in China is sustainably made, is ethically made? How can they be sure about the transparency of a brand or a factory? What tools do they have to recognize as something that is really transparent, actually?
I mean, there's a lot of certifications out there. I guess the best thing is to speak to the brand directly, look at the brand and see if they have information on their factories for a start, like where they actually get made, the names of the factories. Ask them these questions, ask them about the certifications they have, and then once you find out what that certification is, ask them the reason for them getting that certification, why the factory has that particular certification in place, and ask them outside of certifications what the factory is doing. it really is on the brand owners to be able to provide that transparency, and the brand owners need to be working with the factory owners together to ensure that they have enough information to provide the consumer. So yeah, it is a tricky one right now, but it's really responsible for the brand owner to be able to deliver that message to the consumer. And it's just my responsibility as a factory owner to give the transparency to the brands I work with. So it's all about collaboration, and collaboration between factory owner and brand, and the consumer really needs to be holding brands and factories accountable.
Yeah, so we should take our responsibilities, our consumers, I think, like to kind of work with the brands and work with the factories. Well, I think like maybe like make it a triangle of information, better than just to buy something and well to rely on the brands and like this. I think like yeah, maybe now it's the good thing to do, like to be a responsible consumer. Maybe just yeah, like act as if you were kind of working for the brand or the factory, just to
Yeah, exactly.
get to know the information.
Exactly. It's just about research and putting the time in to educate yourself. And it takes time, but you need to look at numerous sources because there's a lot of greenwashing out there. You need to look at many sources, and there's many incredible websites now that are really selling loads of brands on their website that are kind of ensuring that the brands they carry, they've done their due diligence on those brands. So, I mean, all the information's out there when it comes to shopping and buying. It's up to the consumer to really push themselves to find the best solution and not just like spend like 5 minutes going to the high street and buying something. So it's just about, again, it all comes down to consciousness. And when you're at that higher state, will start thinking about the questions to ask and making the best decisions possible.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Joey. Just to explain the spectators, I'm wearing a beanie and I'm wearing a hot clothes because I had to go outside because it was so noisy inside my house. So I had to go on the balcony. And well, so just to put things in place, we met through the fake movement, which is a collective of brands which are ethical and sustainable. Fake meaning fashion for animal kingdom and environment. And well, I think it's a great thing because it puts us in connection with so many interesting people who make the same thing as we do, people who are in the, well, who don't make the same thing but who have the same vision. So yeah, it's a very, very interesting thing. I really like it, being part of it. And so yeah, I was very happy well to meet you and to interview you for this purpose.
Thanks for having me. No, it's always nice to speak with like-minded people, and it was a really nice topic you shared, because yeah, it's just to conclude, people find it so challenging and overwhelming, these topics, but with having this interview, hopefully it gives peace of mind that you don't need to be perfect. All you need to do is try and be the best you can, and that's all that matters. Just every day making a slightly different decision. Does everyone need to be vegan? Ideally, that'd be wonderful, but if it means starting off with 1 vegan meal per week and then the next month is 2 vegan meals per week, that's all you can do. You don't have to go vegan overnight like I did. Big change starts small, tiny little changes. So anyone listening, just hopefully just make the right decisions you can, and just continue to ask the questions and be the best, and meditate. Yeah, meditate, it's really good.
Yeah, I think about this just to end to conclude, that meditation really helps to be conscious about your strength and about your flows. I think, like as you said, consciousness is very important, because like for example, even if you're not like zero waste, even if you're not like 100% vegan, just being aware of what you can do, what you can't, or what you can't right now, and where you want to go is very important, because if you don't see your own flows, you cannot improve. So I think, yeah, just as you said, consciousness is very important about this.
And once you start seeing your own flow, you will become 100% vegan, because you just realize what you've done in the past wasn't correct, and it naturally all just makes so much sense. So yeah, you just have, everyone has their own path to learning these things, and it just takes time.
Well, thank you very much, Joey. I'm very grateful for having you today, and so, well, maybe see you in another fake talk, fake real
Sure.
talk.
Okay,
Bye-bye.